The Shadows of Elderglen. In a time before the memory of men, when the stars yet ruled the skies unchallenged by the sun or moon, there lay in the western reaches of Elderglen a wood so ancient its roots whispered secrets to the earth itself. This was Elderglen, a forest untouched by the axes of mortals, its trees tall and twisted, their gnarled branches reaching heavenward like beseeching hands. Elderglen was a place of power, the kind that made even the boldest hearts falter. Travelers spoke in hushed tones of lights that danced among the trees at night, voices that called out in a language older than stone, and shadows that moved of their own accord. Few dared to enter, and those who did often returned changed, if they returned at all. It was on the eve of the winter solstice that Eowyn, a ranger of the north, found herself standing at the forest's edge. Her cloak, woven of gray and green, was damp from the evening mist, and her dark hair clung to her face in unruly strands. She had been tracking a strange trail for days, hoofprints too large for any deer, too light for a horse. They led her here, to the silent maw of Elderglen. Eowyn hesitated. She was no stranger to danger, but this was different. The air itself seemed to hum with a quiet menace, and the forest loomed before her like a slumbering beast. Yet she pressed on, for the trail was not hers to abandon. The lords of Sindralen had entrusted her with this task, and she would not fail. As she stepped beneath the shadowed canopy, the world changed. The sounds of the open fields faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant croak of ravens. The ground beneath her boots was soft, blanketed in moss that glowed faintly in the dim light. She moved carefully, her hand never straying far from the hilt of her sword. Hours passed, though it was impossible to tell how many. The forest was timeless, its trees blocking the sky so completely that no star could guide her. Eowyn followed the trail with a dogged determination, though unease crept into her heart. The hoofprints had grown stranger, now they glowed faintly, as if marked by some fell magic. At last, she came upon a clearing. In its center stood a tree unlike any she had ever seen, its trunk white as bone, its branches devoid of leaves. At its base lay a figure, cloaked and hooded, motionless. Eowyn approached cautiously, her sword drawn. "Who goes there?" she called, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. The figure did not stir. Closer now, she could see that it was not a man or an elf, but something else entirely. Its cloak shimmered like starlight, and its face, if it could be called a face, was smooth and featureless as though carved from polished stone. "You have come far, Eowyn of the North," it said, though its lips did not move. The voice seemed to come from the air itself, deep and resonant. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I am a shadow of what once was," it replied. "A guardian of this place, bound to its fate as the stars are bound to the night. But the forest is dying, Ranger, and with it, I too shall fade." Eowyn lowered her sword, though her grip remained firm. "Why is Elderglen dying?" The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, it raised a hand, a pale, slender thing, and pointed to the east. "There lies the source of the blight. A creature born of darkness and despair, it feeds upon the heart of the forest. If it is not stopped, Elderglen will fall, and the lands beyond will soon follow." Eowyn's heart sank. She had heard tales of such creatures, ancient and terrible, but she had never faced one herself. Yet she nodded, for there was no other choice. "Tell me what I must do," she said. The figure extended its other hand, and a small vial appeared, filled with a liquid that shimmered like liquid moonlight. "Take this. It is the essence of Elderglen's last light. Pour it upon the creature, and it will undo the darkness." Eowyn took the vial, its cool surface sending a shiver through her fingers. "But beware," the figure said. "The creature's power is great, and it will not surrender easily. You must be swift, for the light is fleeting, and once it fades, there will be no second chance." The battle that followed was unlike anything Eowyn had ever faced. The creature, a mass of writhing shadows and glowing eyes, rose from the earth like a storm-given flesh. Its roar shook the forest, and its tendrils lashed out with a force that nearly knocked her from her feet. But she was fast, and her sword was true. She fought with a grace born of years in the wild, her movements swift and deliberate. At last, when the creature lunged, she hurled herself forward, uncorking the vial and casting its contents upon the beast. The effect was immediate. The creature let out a bone-rattling screech as the light consumed it, its form unraveling like smoke in the wind. Within moments, it was gone, and the forest fell silent once more. Eowyn collapsed to her knees, the vial slipping from her grasp. She was alive, though barely, and the forest around her seemed to breathe again, its trees standing taller, its air growing lighter. The figure reappeared, its cloak shimmering faintly in the renewed light. "You have done well," it said. "Elderglen owes you its life, as do all who dwell beyond its borders." But Eowyn shook her head. "The cost was great," she said softly. "And I do not know if I have the strength to return." The figure knelt beside her, placing a hand upon her shoulder. "Strength lies not in the body, but in the heart. You are stronger than you know, Ranger." And with that, it faded, leaving her alone in the clearing. Eowyn stood slowly, her body aching but her spirit unbroken. She turned her gaze to the edge of the forest, where the faint light of dawn was beginning to creep through the trees. She had saved Elderglen, but her journey was far from over. For in a world as vast and wild as this, there was always another shadow waiting to be cast aside.